everybody, thanks for joining me here today. This is Nicole with Topaz, and today's session is all about mastering Topaz Clarity. We're going to be going over the advanced technology behind the program, what's really the driving force of Topaz Clarity, and some tips on how to kind of think about it as you're working along in more advanced workflows. Topaz Clarity offers these really powerful controls over contrast. It intelligently separates your image into several areas of contrast, and it allows for you to really add definition and punch to your images with very little effort whatsoever. So we're going to be talking about this proprietary technology that we've developed here. We're going to be discussing the fact that it is a halo-free algorithm that has been integrated into this as well, so you can really push your image to be quite dramatic without worrying that you're going to take it into an unnatural or over-processed type of look. We also have new masking tools that we have developed for this particular program, and we're introducing it with this new masking module that you see over here on the right. So we'll be going over a couple of these more advanced masking tools, and you can see even though that the technology is advanced, that the actual process is quite easy. We're also going to be talking about the HSL tools as well, the hue, saturation, and luminance, as we move along within this. Please note that this is not a beginning session. I've already done many intro to Clarity webinars, and we'll be continuing to kind of do more simple workflows where you can really add stuff to your image quickly. This is more talking about the technology and what's really going on in the back end of things. So it's a little bit more advanced if you're looking for something just to introduce you to Topaz Clarity. We already have a session posted on our YouTube page at youtube.com/topazlabs that'll really introduce you to just the basics of the program. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Let me hop on out of this beginning screen. Okay, well, we're going to go into the program first, but come back to this screen to kind of discuss the contrast variations that happen within Topaz Clarity. But first, let me just go ahead and open up an image that we can use. Let's get rid of this top copy. Just making a quick background copy. Right now, we're just going to be talking about the technology to start off with, then we'll go into a couple workflows. I'm going to go into Topaz Clarity by going up to my filters list, Topaz Labs, Topaz Clarity. Topaz Clarity is going to be compatible with Photoshop, Photoshop Elements, Photo Effects Lab, that's our own host program, with a layered workflow. Aperture, Lightroom, iPhoto, PaintShop Pro, many other programs as well. Today I am using Photoshop CS6 just so I can access many images and graphics that I need to at the same time. All right, so I'm going to go into Topaz Clarity. I'll do a very quick overview. Basically, it's very similar to the rest of our effects plugins. Let me reset all here. Over here on the left, you'll have your collections and presets. We have over 100 presets available for you within this program. You can just scroll to the type of image you brought in. So for this one, maybe a macro collection would do great. Go to a preset. You know, let's see, kind of like this flower too. Click on it. It's applied to your image. Here's before. Here's after. Voila, that's a good starting point for you. If you want to take a look at all of your presets all in the same collection at once, you can just click on the quick view guide here, and I'll show you that icon one more time, but it's just to the right of the word presets, and you can scroll through all of these at the same time to kind of see, oh, wait a minute, I actually kind of like this flower 3 preset instead. Do that, and it will be applied to my image. The way you get to that quick view guide is this little icon over here to the right of the word presets. So just click on that again and it'll take you into that quick view guide. You can add or delete presets. Your menu gives you access to different preferences. Let's see here, such as if you don't want those little flyouts for your preset pop-ups, you can turn those off. You can check for updates. This is where you enter your key. Your main viewing area is here in the middle. You can get rid of the sides of your screens, those two left or right panels, just by clicking these little arrows, giving you an area to really look at your image completely. You can change the background color. You can change your viewing mode by up here in the top zoom controls. Go 1:1 to look at your image at 100%. Go to the fit icon to get it to fit back into your image. You also have just regular zoom controls. I'm going to bring these guys back and change my background color back to the default light gray. I really like that for this image. You can also look at your image as a split screen. So the left would be your before, the right after. That split screen icon is at the top left of the main viewing area. To get back to the regular one screen mode or one image mode, you just click on the one image icon and you're back. And today we're really going to be focusing over here on the right-hand side. This is where all of the actual adjustments come into play. You have several different viewing modes here in this top right area. Your navigator, which allows you to look at a specific part of the image. And whenever you zoom in, you have this little box that allows you to drag that box around so you can scroll around your image all at 100% or whatever level you want to be at. You have a loop view. The loop view will get you when you are at, if you want to be looking at your image within this fit mode, if you go to your loop area or your loop mode, you'll see a little box show up and you can start moving that box around. Wherever you put that box, all of a sudden over here in this top right area, that is the area you're viewing at 100%. So the loop mode is great. We'll be talking about the masking mode, and the histogram mode is just good so you can check out as you work along. You can check your tone levels and see if you might need to bring your white or black clipping levels down. All right, so I'm going to go back to the navigation mode and we're going to go back to reset all. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about is technology, and you can find that within our dynamics group within the clarity adjustment tool set. So within the dynamics group, you'll see that you have 4 different levels of contrast. You have micro contrast, low contrast, medium, and high. Now I can sit here and say the same thing that I've been saying, which is, your micro contrast is going to target very small micro contrast variations. Your low contrast and medium contrast are going to target those mid-tone contrast variations. Your high contrast are going to really do your shadows and highlights. But this is a more technologically, people who really want to know what's going on. So I created this diagram to help understand what micro, low, medium, and high really means within each image. So let me cancel out of this. We'll take this image back in, and I'll show you kind of how it all relates back. But first, let me get to. There we go. Here we are. So this is just kind of a chart to show you what the topaz clarity contrast variations really are. If you look at this tonal scale, it goes all the way from white to black. I have several different types of tonal variations: the high, the micro, the low, and the medium. So the micro contrast variations, again, are very small variances of contrast. Now, if you want to know the actual level that each one is at, basically there's going to be a separation point within the micro contrast, about 15 levels of tone. If you think about this as being a 0 to 255, I'm sorry, 0 being black, 255 being white, and each one of those numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are each a level of tone, then you can think about micro contrast affecting all areas of your image that have less than 17 levels of that tone. So your micro contrast is going to affect a large portion of your image, almost your entire image. From your whites, it's going to bring nice texture contrast into your image. It's going to really work on let's say like our flower image that will go back in, it'll really bring out the contrast between veins on a petal. Even though there's not a lot of contrast in the original image, it'll work on that micro contrast just to pull those and add some punch and definition to that area. Then you have your low and your medium. The low and medium contrast are going to be your midtones. And with the low, the tone level in between is going to be about 35. So here and here are 2 examples. The medium level difference, tone difference is going to be about 75. And so that I've shown that with these 2 medium ones. And then the high, these are 2 examples of high contrast variations. And within our technology, it's about 175 level difference between the 2 different tones. So that means, for example, if I adjust just my high contrast variation, it will affect my lows and my highlights. So my shadows and my highlights, and then everything in between these two areas won't be affected. So you can really pinpoint exactly the areas of tone that you want to increase or decrease your contrast to get the best look that you're after for you. Now, this isn't a specific diagram, so you can kind of think of it like this. Let me grab this high contrast group. This high contrast can move anywhere along this line of tone. The thing is that whatever is in the middle isn't going to be affected. But that high contrast variation can be at this point, so all the way up at 250 to, let's say, about 75, or it can go all the way down here, and it's actually an area of contrast that's being adjusted. The variance is about maybe 15 to 190, and then nothing in the tonal scale of 15 between 190 is really going to be affected by that high contrast variation. So let's look at our image again and kind of relate that back to what we're seeing within the actual image. All right, so the micro contrast, if I just move the micro contrast and nothing else, it's going to really work on everything within my image. Let's go 1 to 1. So it'll work on even these tiny, tiny, tiny contrast variations within the petal of a very, very light gray or off-white versus a white. You'll start to see definition brought out in those areas, as well as the darker and brighter areas. So taking that micro contrast up is going to affect everything. Basically, it affects the majority of it. Visually, it's very it basically does your overall contrast, but it does it on a micro level. If I do my high contrast only, high contrast again has a lot. It's really just working on the shadows and highlights. You'll see that the darkest area of your image just get darker, the brighter areas get brighter, but all of these small contrast variations, like within the petal and things like that, were not affected. Now if I go back up to my micro contrast, you'll see that it pulls that contrast changes in whenever I take those up. So you can really, again, have a lot of control over where you add your clarity and contrast within this program using this particular technology. My personal way of working with it is usually for a macro image, I always like to add a little bit of extra micro contrast, especially because of all of the delicate variances in tone within petals and flowers. And just to bring that out a little, I always use my micro contrast and take that up a bit. That's quite a bit. Low contrast is going to work on my midtone, so it's going to not bring out any more of this micro contrast that I brought out in the whites of the petal, but it will start to define and kind of make darker and brighter your midtone areas, your shorter midtones. So it still affects a large portion of your image, but not as much as that micro contrast. Medium contrast is going to start affecting longer midtones, so brighter and darker midtones than your low contrast would, and then your high contrast, again, major highlights, major shadow areas. I like to usually take my high contrast down because if I've added in a lot of contrast into my midtones, at that point I've started to block up my blacks a little bit, perhaps clipping my whites because I've added all this contrast, and I can actually bring it back with my high contrast, because it'll take those darker and brighter areas and try to lessen the contrast, but I still am getting a huge contrast control by using the rest of these. So here's before, here's after. Additionally, we have these tone level things, or tone level adjustments, so you can go further with your contrast variation adjustments and take your black level up, maybe your white level down, if you have some clipping going on, to get exactly what you're looking for. Let's see here. Let me go back to the fit so you can see what this looks like now. Here's before. Here's after. It's pretty strong, but it also starts to give me almost a 3D effect because I have so much control over adding uh, contrast into the areas I want to add it into. Let's get rid of this so you can see it a little bit larger here. I'll go ahead and zoom in. There we go. Here's before again and after. Okay, so let's go ahead and also talk about the halo-free algorithm that's going on within this program. Most, or not most, I just say other tools might start adding in artifacts or certain types of halos within your image when you really start working on edges that have a lot of contrast. Other programs might add clarity by actually increasing, or it's evident what's going on if you really work on the clarity. What it is actually doing is it's taking those darker edges and making them darker, the brighter edges and making those brighter. And if you really push certain tools that use clarity, you can start to see a halo or artifact developed around those edges. So it's almost a shadow of brightness or darkness. But within Topaz Clarity, you don't have to worry about that because it has this halo-free algorithm that was implemented into the actual technology. Just to kind of give you one more idea on these more macro images where a lot of this micro contrast is just really beautiful. I'm going to say reset, go 1 to 1. You can really push this quite a bit. Get a lot to come out within the micro contrast only. And then if I don't want to work on my midtones any more than that micro contrast already did, and I only want to work on, let's say, getting these highlighted areas within my dewdrops to really get much brighter and maybe the really dark shadows to get darker, I'll go into my high contrast alone and just put that up. And it doesn't affect anything else. So I can again go that versus that. It's actually a pretty limited adjustment within this particular image, really focusing in on those areas. But altogether, here's before, here's after. Many programs would start to add halos on these really strong lines, and something that is pretty evident that you're making a big change in your contrast or exposure. And if this program does not have that at all. So that is something that you need to know about this particular technology. It's really advanced there. Okay, so a couple other things. Let's go ahead and cancel out of here, and we'll talk about the HSL adjustments that are going into the program as well. Here is an image. This is the beginning image. This is before. And very quickly I was able to add in the detail, or not the detail, I'm sorry, the contrast enhancements that I needed to bringing out the illusion of detail within my lower right area, within the waterfall, and then I was able to really change the way the colors were in this image, the saturation levels, the luminosity, and the hues very quickly using that HSL technology. Let me go ahead and take this background layer, make a new copy of it, and take that into Topaz Clarity so we can discuss that. And then we'll discuss the masking technology as well. Okay, I'm just going to press reset all down here in the lower right. And when I take this image in, or initially before even starting work on this image, I noticed that the levels don't look quite right. My attention is really being drawn down here to the lower right because it's much brighter. I don't see a lot of texture detail or texture contrast coming out within this area. I have a lot of clipping going on within my waterfall, within the bright whites here. And I just want to give it a little punch. For me, knowing that, let's see here, should I go 1 to 1? Let's see. No, I'm going to leave it just maybe back here. That'll work. The micro contrast is really going to start working on the contrast differences between just the small variances in this rock alone in this highlighted area. So I'm just going to take that up pretty high. Let's click on that. And you can see it really brings out some different colors that are going on there. Here's before, here's after. It gives it a little punch. I'm actually just going to take that up pretty high. It also brings out detail within the waterfall. Here's before, here's after. Again, before and after. Maybe I want to add a little bit of low contrast and a little bit of medium contrast into my midtones. And then once I have added all this contrast, it's really starting to block up in those black areas, and it's starting to clip even more in the whites. So I'm going to take my high contrast level down, and it's just going to open that back up for me. Now watch what happens there again. Watch this waterfall and all the white clipping and everything. So I'm still getting really large, and oops, that's the white level. That helps too. I'm at my high contrast though. If I take that down, I get to open up my blacks and take the clipping down to my white, bring tone back into my white. I'm going to take my medium contrast down just a little. It's a little too much for me, and actually that micro contrast is going a little crazy. Okay, so here's before, here's after. Definitely added some punch and definition in there, but it still feels natural. Now, if I still have clipping in my whites, or I still have some blocking up in my shadows, I'm going to go down to my black level, maybe open that up a little, and then, actually I like to a little bit more open there. And then my white level, take that down to try to get some more tone back into my waterfall, which really worked there, so that's great. Okay, again, here's before and after. I'm going to go back to fit so you can see the full image here. And already I feel like I'm definitely improving it. Here's before, here's after. It's a little strong, but I could work on that maybe by taking my micro contrast down just a little bit more. There we go. In my hue, saturation, luminance, we have the IntelliColor technology that we introduced within Photo Effects Lab and kind of integrated into some of our other programs' color tools. But this is the first tool that breaks down the color so significantly into 8 different color ranges, allowing you to specifically target an individual color range and change that color range's hue, which is changing the color of it, the saturation, which is changing the vibrance of it, and then luminance, which is going to start changing the brightness, whether it's lighter or darker. So if, let's say, I want to, my orange rock is still distracting me. Maybe I want to take my orange and go a little bit towards red. I'm going to take my orange towards red. Wow, look at that. I can take it towards green or red. Now this can get really strong here, and that's one of the advantages of the technology within this particular HSL filter. IntelliColor technology allows for you to get these really strong changes like you see here, but the quality, if you scroll in on it, the quality is still very good. Sure, it might, this actually to me looks way too red, but you wouldn't be able to necessarily get to this point even in another program. So for more graphic images where you really do want to change the color, it might be really beneficial that you can change it and still have great quality there. All right, so I'm just going to do a couple changes here. Take that more up. Maybe take my red, no, leave my red there. I'll take my yellow a little bit closer to orange. And then we're going to hop on into, oh, greens. I'm going to take my greens up. Look how far I can go with my greens. This is a really nice natural transition. I can go more towards my yellows, and then again all the way back towards my greens. So you can do a lot with this HSL slider. I'm going to go into my saturation and really start to play around. Really want to get those fall colors coming out, those red leaves, orange leaves. So I'm going to take up some of my reds, my oranges, maybe my yellows, even my greens. Now you might say, well, you've taken up half those adjustments. Why didn't you just take your whole saturation level up? You can. I'm going to go ahead and take all these back down to 0. We can come down to this lower saturation adjustment. It says overall, and take that up. But you'll notice as you take that up, if you actually take all of your sliders up to 0.3, you start getting some serious crazy colors, especially in that waterfall, and it just starts to feel oversaturated. The ability to individually go in and control each and every one of these is really great. Allows me to do exactly what I want and not have to worry about affecting this blue tone in the waterfall in a negative way. So I'm much happier doing it individually like this than I was the other way around. Now the luminosity again is going to change the brightness of a certain color. So if I want to maybe take my red and orange leaves, make them a little bit darker, I can come in and do that here. Or I can take them brighter as well. Here's brighter, here's darker. Same thing with the orange. I could go bright with the orange, much darker with the orange. I'm going to just take the orange down a little, not much. And here's before and after. That's also a little bit strong for me. There we go. Okay, here's before, here's after. I can look at this before our HSL adjustments. This is before any hue, saturation, and luminosity changes. And now after. Subtle, but it makes all the difference in the world. So really happy with the breakdown of all these different color ranges and the ability to go in and individually work with those. The last thing I really want to touch on as far as the technology is the masking tools that we have within the program. Some of those changes that you can make to like an image like this, or a landscape or a macro image, just won't work with people or portrait images or something else. And you might need to do some pretty extensive masking on just a certain range or color or anything like that. And you have the ability to do that within Clarity very easily. I'm going to go ahead and open up, let's see here. This will be a good one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of my background and hop on into Topaz Clarity. So for this image, when I look at it, I see some problems right away that I think Clarity might be able to help. Number one, I just really want to bring out more contrast going on um, in the texture of this wall without actually bringing in detail and sharpening it or anything like that. I also see that she has her dress is starting to clip in certain areas. I don't think it's actually it still has tone, but I definitely, as I increase contrast in certain areas, I'm going to have to counteract that and take it down in others. Let's see here, and if I want to add some nice color and punch through the HSL to the background colors and really step things up, I think it'll look really nice. However, I know that just from experience, once I do that, it's going to make their skin look crazy. So let me go ahead and go through that process, and then we'll go through how to really take advantage of those masking tools to counteract the negative effects on their skin. So I actually do want a little bit of micro contrast. I know this is a portrait image that has skin, but I still want some micro contrast to come into those very small contrast variations of this really beautiful wall in the background. So I want to bring that out. So I'm going to do that with my micro contrast. I'm going to take my low contrast up. Here's before, here's after, maybe some medium contrast as well. And as I continue to go up with these particular ones, you'll notice more and more the darks are getting darker and the brights are getting brighter, because that's what contrast will do. And if you want to counteract that, it's really easy to do with your high contrast. Taking that down, the high contrast will open up those dark areas, such as her hair, for example, his hair. Her dress is too white, so we've added tone back in. So that's really nice. We can also come down at the black level and white level and work with that and the midtones to create exactly what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the black just a little bit more. And I'm going to take that white level down quite a bit. Bring back in those shadows. Or actually bring in the shadows that weren't there in that original image. Here's before, here's after. We're just making those creases in the skirt a little bit more evident. And the wall looks much better to me. Hair looks great. Skin, not so great. We'll get to that here in 1 second. Actually, we'll go ahead and work on that now. So the changes that we've made to everything else look good, but you can tell their skin starts to, all those little small contrast variations are now being affected in the skin. So their skin starts to look a little rough. So be careful when you're working on portrait images. My favorite new way of working with this masking tool is to work with this color range slider. This is an advanced technology that works on specific color range quick masks. So if I click on my color range tool, you'll see that in the top right, you're masking a mask is automatically generated, and it's generated based off of the color that this green dot that is automatically placed within the image is on. So as I move this green dot around, wherever I place that green dot is the color that's going to start being masked out of my mask. So if I want to mask out their skin to preserve the natural softness that was there and not increase that contrast, just place it on her face. And you can see over here on the top right, the darkest areas are their skin now, which is exactly where I want it. However, you can also see that other areas, because it is on more orange, yellow type of skin tones, it's being affected in the background as well, which is what I wanted to add contrast to. I can actually just adjust my size and sensitivity to the particular area that the green dot is in and change so it's not affecting the background. So I'm going to take my sensitivity maybe up a little bit more. That'll eliminate some of the color range of that orange color range that it's bringing in. And then I'm going to take my size down so it's not affecting the background, just their skin. Then I might actually take my sensitivity down to bring back in more of their skin. So you can see over here it is just affecting their skin, and I've quickly taken all those contrast adjustments out of their skin and left it on the background. I'm going to say OK, and I'll let you see kind of what's happened. Here's before. This is with the contrast adjustments being applied to their skin. And now their skin looks so much better. I've seen some people out there with Topaz Clarity saying Clarity works great on architecture, it works great on buildings, it works great on landscapes, but don't use it on portraits. I've been using it on portraits and love it. You just have to know these masking tools to quickly take out anything you might not like that's being added to their skin. And one thing about Topaz Clarity, you can do it as quick as I just did it here. So I'm going to do the same thing with hue, saturation, and luminance. I really want to boost up some of these colors here, and then I'm going to have to take it out of their skin. Another great thing about this program is you have individual masking modules for each major tool set. That is so, let's say I want to keep the I want to keep the detail enhancements that I worked on in the image, but I don't want to keep the HSL enhancements in a certain area. I can individually take out the HSL and it stays in the clarity areas. So here if I went in and I said, you know what, I want to take maybe my oranges and come a little closer to red. Okay, let's see, my red and go a little, I'm going to go a little closer to orange. Yellow, I'm going to come a little bit closer to orange as well. That'll be good there. And then saturation is really where I'm going to play here. The orange I'm going to take up. Really focusing in on this background itself and not their skin, because I'm doing crazy stuff to their skin right now. Maybe taking those yellows up. I'm going to take the green, saturate the green a little bit more. I think that's looking really nice. Luminosity, I'm going to actually bring my oranges and my yellows darker. I'm going to take my greens darker too. All right, so here's before, here's after. This is before the HSL adjustments and now after, and it looks horrible on their skin. This is something you will run into if you use Clarity HSL adjustments on skin as well. If you really change those orange and yellows, because orange and yellows are going to affect all sorts of skin types. So now I can just go into my masking and go through that same process, and I can show you again just how quick this really is once you learn how to do it. There we are. I have the green dot placed directly on her face. I'm going to take the size down, and I'm going to take that sensitivity down. I'm going to say OK, and let me show you the before and after. Oops, here's before the mask, and you can see their skin is going very fake orangey type of feel, which was not their natural skin. And here's after the mask, bringing back in their natural skin tone. Here's before and after the masking. So those types of more advanced masking tools are going to be great for this program, and they're so quick and easy. So let me show you this before. Here's after. This is pretty strong for my personal taste. However, you can see you can change this and really bring in some great contrast enhancements and HSL adjustments, really change the whole entire feel of the image, and still have a natural skin for your subject. Press OK. Show you that one more time. Here's before, here's after. Very cool. Okay, everybody, that is about it. Thank you again so much for joining me. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. All right, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.